City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson. Alderman Holmes. Alderman Tindem. Alderman Grover. Alderman Rainey. Alderman Burris. 9-0.
We have a quorum. Welcome to the Monday, January 13th, 2014 meeting of the Evanston City Council, and Happy New Year, everyone. First item on the agenda is the mayor's public announcements, and I have one particularly for the whole council. This council is a very good council. I've said that everywhere. I think we're excellent. However, we have been beaten badly by the Cub Scouts. The Cub Scouts came, as they do once a year, to visit me, and I put them in here. And I have them be the mayor and alderman and city clerk, et cetera. And then there are Cub Scouts making public comments, and they raise the issues that the council then has to debate. So one Cub Scout said, "What are you going to do about crime?" And this council, the Better Than We Are council, banned guns in less than a minute, not only in the city of Evanston, but throughout the United States of America. And that concludes my public announcements. City Manager.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, good evening and Happy New Year. Several items. We'll take first our Martin Luther King Day events. We have a wonderful opportunity this coming Saturday. Tim Rose, who's the director of the Fleetwood Jourdain Theater, is here to talk about our event Saturday afternoon at the Fleetwood Jourdain.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, City Clerk, City Manager. My name is Tim Rose. I'm the Artistic Director of the Fleetwood Jours Theater. So good to see everyone tonight. Thank you. It's been a tradition at the Fleetwood Jourdain Community Center to celebrate the amazing person who was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and this year will be no different. This Saturday, which is the 18th, at noon, we will be gathering with hundreds of people, as this has been a testament for those who have attended before, where we will have guest artists such as the Evanston's Children's Choir, the Jonte Drums and Percussion, which is a West African drum group. We have the Christ Temple Praise Dancers. We have a blues man, David DuPont, jazz singer Faye Kaiser, actress Kat Davidson, and spoken word by Robin Austin, with some guest speakers, which would include Reverend Velda Love from Second Baptist Church, and our own wonderful Reverend Kenneth Cherry over there at Robert Crown. So I just wanted to, I know I sent everyone, each one of you on the council, an email inviting you, and if you can attend, that would be so wonderful. And the mayor will be speaking, doing a welcoming for everyone at this event. And we do a community breakfast for those who are participating, starting at 9 o'clock. So they come in and have a wonderful breakfast buffet to get to know each other. And then afterwards, if you know Betsy Jenkins, you know she's going to feed the city. And so she's going to be there, and we're also going to have soups and sandwiches for all those who do attend. So I just want to say thank you very much, City Manager, for inviting me to come and to speak. And once again, as the Artistic Director of your theater, I want to say thank you for your continued support. It's very important to our community that Fleetwood Jourdain Theater exists. Coming on our 35th anniversary this year.
Sell a little bit, Tim.
Oh, gosh. Gloria Bonne Clooney started this theater 35 years ago. And I'm going to tell you, this is no small feat. If you know anything about theater, you know that theaters don't last very long. The Goodmans and the Steppenwolfs and the Northlights and the Nexus and all those Pivens, those are anomalies when it comes to theater organizations. And Fleetwood has been able to hang on. And it's only because of the support of this community and people like Ms. Holmes, who have been there and diligently making sure that Fleetwood stays where we are, which is a part of this community. So on our 35th anniversary, we had 3 wonderful plays, Having Our Say, the Delaney Sisters' First 100 Years. You may have heard of that play, Gee's Bend, about Gee's Bend, Alabama, and the quilts that were made down there, and those women who went on to strive in the civil rights movement, and a play that I am personally penning called Why Not Me, a Sammy Davis Jr. story. And of course, we're going to end with our concerts, our Jazz Meets Blues concert, as well as our gospel concert. This year, we're featuring the men of gospel music, conducted once again by the Reverend Kenneth Cherry. So along with so many other events that are going on, our collaborations with Second Baptist and Beth Emmett this year with their Sankofa group, we are putting on a play about their civil rights journey that they did last spring as well. more and more things are just coming on the plate for Fleetwood Jourdain Theater, and we just want to continue to say thank you. Tell everyone in your neighborhood, as our new saying is, tell a friend, tell a neighbor that you support Fleetwood Jourdain Theater. And if you are not on our newsletter, I'll make sure that each and every one of you are part of our newsletter. Thank you. Well, is that, thank you so much.
Thank you.
evening,
Alderman
everybody.
Grover?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Rose, what was the date of the anniversary celebration?
Of the anniversary celebration
Yes,
for the Fleetwood
yeah.
Jourdain thing, where we're going to have a gala, which will be on July 12th. Our first play goes up actually June 12th, and we run all the way to the end of August. So we have the 3 plays and the 2 concerts that take place during the summertime.
So the plays will run back to back?
Back to back. We
During the-
have 3 weeks with 1 week in case we sell out each
Sure.
of them. And I'm hoping that we will, so we can have an extension of each
Right.
play.
So this will highlight our summer at Fleetwood?
This will
for sure.
highlight your summer, and once again, just put Fleetwood out there because they're pretty much the only theater, particularly locally, that's producing in the summertime. And so each year has continued to grow and grow in its popularity.
Right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Next, Madam Mayor, members of the council, we've had some very busy times since we were all last here, and would like to bring you up to speed on a couple of them. First is a sad occasion, and that is a horrible fire that occurred at the corner of Davis and Oak back at the end of December. Our Fire Chief, Greg Kleiber, is here. I've asked him to kind of walk through what occurred and give you an update of the fine work that the Evanston Fire Department did in a very unfortunate circumstance. Chief Kleiber?
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Madam Mayor, City Clerk, members of the City Council, I'm going to give you an oversight of our initial operations. I'm going to show a 4 or 5 minute video of what we experienced out of 5 hours of being on the scene out there that evening and early morning hours of December 29th. But just to refresh everybody's memory, December 29th, about 2:30 in the morning, we responded to a call for a fire at 1033 Davis. The initial companies reported smoke from the roof, and if you look at this overhead shot, you can see this is what the building and properties looked like prior to December 29th. So we have Pine Yard right here, we have Technicolor, and then Taco Diablo. This is Wheel and Sprocket. So the first companies arrived. They saw flames coming from these commercial cooking vent hoods. So they went to the roof, and they saw a flame coming around and in and around this area right here. So their next step in their operations was, at the same time, we had a company making an interior attack and moving it their way all the way to the back area here. And from the reports that they stated, it was fairly clear inside the kitchen area and inside the entire restaurant. The initial truck company that went to the roof cut an inspection hole into the roof area and found flame and fire, heavy involvement in what they discovered was wood truss space. So wood truss construction is our most dangerous type of fire. And if you notice this building, you'll see this is actually doubled truss. So right down the center here is the center of this building. We have one truss here and one truss on the other side. This is not separated by a firewall. This is, right here. And that, in conjunction with the outstanding work of our firefighters, saved this bike shop, as well as, I'm not exaggerating here, many properties along Davis Street east of Pine Yard and the rest of the establishments here. So once you see that, once you see fire in the wood truss space, we have SOGs that dictate how we're going to fight that fire from that point on. And
SOG?
standard operating guideline. So we see involvement into the truss space. Companies are ordered off the roof immediately. And every company that is inside the building attempting an interior offensive attack is ordered out. And that is not a call that any of our firefighters like to hear, because they like to get in there and put the fire out. And when that happens, we want to protect property, but we also want to protect our firefighters. And then we have to go into what's called a defensive operation. And that's what we did. And that's what we did for 5 hours. And we did the best we could to protect everything east of here, behind, so that's north. This is Oak Street. This is Davis. And I'm going to show you right now. Incidentally, we had all of our resources were there, both in terms of staffing. Every on-duty firefighter was there. Our division chiefs were there. I was there. And we had 5 outside communities as part of a second-level MABUS box alarm. We had Morton Grove, Winnetka, Wilmette, Skokie, and Northfield, and as well as other outside communities coming in for station coverage for our fire stations, for other calls that might come in while we're here for 5 hours. Things don't just stop because we have one incident. So very grateful for the type of system that we have in place in Illinois. Again, I'm not going to go on, but we have an excellent mutual aid response system, and it was put into play this evening. So why don't we start the video? We'll stop at about 4 minutes. This is about 45 minutes in, about 1 hour into the fire. And about 4 minutes into this video, you'll see the partial collapse. So once we move into a defensive operation, we want to surround the building with our aerial pipes and our aerial ladders, our ladder trucks. And you'll see that coming up soon.
Alderman Grover.
Chief Clapper, is there a way to get a link to this video?
That's a good question. This was shot by a freelance journalist, and that might be difficult, but we were able to gain access to it. But there are other videos. In fact, there's a video on YouTube of this fire that exists right now. It's just not of this quality.
Well, thank you for sharing this.
So you'll see that's one of our aerial trucks, ladder trucks. You can see 2 there, and there should be a third. So we have both of our aerial ladder trucks flowing over 1,000 gallons a minute of water right now. And Skokie also had their ladder truck there, and they were flowing the same amount of water. So 3,000 gallons a minute from our aerial pipes, and then we also set up on the roof of Wheel and Sprocket a monitor with a 2.5-inch hose line attached to it, as well as on the street right at the corner of Oak and Davis. And those are flowing about 500 gallons a minute each. So when you calculate that out, in 5 hours' time, it was over 1 million gallons of water. So once we go defensive, our tactics change from the immediate property, and we're trying to minimize the damages as best we can, but then protecting exposures. And the exposures we had, as I described, every property east. And what we discovered was there was smoke, some light smoke was entering into the animal hospital, and we made some phone calls and were able to get the personnel from Bramer Animal Hospital to the scene to unlock it so we didn't have to force entry, and took 13 pets to evacuated to a Skokie facility that evening. So I think very shortly here you're going to see the partial collapse. There you go. So I think you can stop the video now. Cindy, thanks. So that's kind of gives you an idea out of a 4 or 5 minute snippet of a 5-hour operation. And I just want to I want to compliment the work of our firefighters and praise their work, because when I'm sitting in the command van and you see decisions being made in the cooperation and the coordination and the professionalism of our firefighters. And this was a complex operation. This relied on knowing how to pump, number one, relay operations from a fire hydrant to a fire engine to an aerial ladder truck. These are all complex. You have to know how to do that. And the professionalism of our firefighters, I think, and decisions made by our operations chief on that day went a long way to save and protect the exposures, not only east but also across the alley to what's new construction over there now. I also want to thank, because we were out there so long, other city staff and the city manager's office with Martha Logan, Erica Storley, Luke was assisting us in actually tweeting messages to the community as the fire was happening. So that was, I got home and I looked at my Facebook. I'm like, how did this get on here so fast? You know, Public Works, we had to refuel, and fire engines were out there because they were running out of fuel. So Dave Waite in the services department came out with a fuel truck and refueled some of our fire engines. We had to clear the street.
Alderman Fisk and Alderman Rainey have. Okay. Go ahead and finish.
Okay, just a couple more. And just the water department, we had to increase pressure at that location from the water department to assist us in those operations. So we had them boost the water pressure at the water department to enable us to flow that amount of water at that high pressure for that amount of time. And that's, so my point is, this was an effort primarily by our department, but it required the cooperation and help and assistance of many others. And I think you should feel, as a council, tremendously proud that you have a city that works like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Fisk?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, I'm just almost in tears here. It was very clear to me, being out there on the street and talking with you, just the level of coordination that was required and what a wonderful job everyone did. And I think it's so helpful for the community to understand that it's more than the firefighters on the scene. It's everybody working together, because we don't normally, think about those things. But I'm incredibly proud of you and your men and the city and city staff and everyone. Could you speak for a minute? Remember, we were talking about when the fire started, if any of you remember, it was about 45 degrees outside,
Right.
And the wind was calm.
Yeah, we had a number of things working for us that evening, and that's one of them.
And that probably saved the rest of the block on Davis Street.
If we had a wind-blown fire, it could have gone all the way to Maple.
Right.
And fortunate for us, we did not have very little wind and not the weather, the temperatures that we had about a week later or four days later, and that would have been a real problem. And part of the video that wasn't shown is there's a segment of Oak Street which looks like a lake or a pond because it's this deep in water, and because the runoff was just going into the street, and that's another area where Public Works or streets helped us because they were able to clear the debris and the water was able to then move out of there.
Could you also explain some of the things I've learned here? Are the boxes that you were referring to, for example, Braemar Animal Hospital has one of them. I don't know what they're called, but they are for the business owners. They're a way of keeping your keys on the outside of the building. The fire department is the only one who has access to that, but it means that there won't be damage to your business if the fire department needs to go in.
Right.
In the case of Braemar, I mean, saving a dozen animals
Right.
and getting them out of there was very important.
Those are called Knox boxes. So each of our fire apparatus has keys to unlock those Knox boxes, and inside those Knox boxes, if you have a fire suppression system inside your business, you're by code supposed to have a Knox box. And when you have an alarm and we can't gain access, that's how we gain access, so we don't have to take an axe or a Halligan bar and break the door or the windows. And so that really helps us gain access without doing any damage at all. And then we can go and investigate and see what's going on.
Thanks.
Alderman Rainey.
Greg, can you tell us, is there any determination about the cause of the fire?
Well, not final yet. We're working on it. We have the insurance adjusters for the property owners and the property renters have pulled some equipment out, and they're examining it forensically in a sterile or a controlled environment, and that's in, I believe, somewhere in Skokie. So we have a pretty good idea. We know where the location of where it started, and kitchen area of Pine Yard, but for sure we don't know the exact cause. And looking at the equipment that was pulled out of there prior to the demolition, which incidentally was occurring today, they were able to pull that kitchen equipment out to take a better look at it.
Do we allow the construction of truss roofs anymore for new construction?
You know, I don't know when the last time there was a new construction that involved wood truss.
It might be because they're banned.
They're not. That's a good question. I don't think they're banned, but that's something that just doesn't happen anymore. That type of construction.
In addition to fire issues, I'm familiar with them. There are other issues. I mean, if one of the posts,
Well,
it
yeah.
collapses.
Let me just quickly explain what the real danger is, because once fire gets into that wood truss space, they sit on. You'll notice that the truss beams sit on pilasters or beam columns, and once fire impinges on that space and the wood and the columns, the wood truss roof can collapse either partially, like it did there, or all at one time. And 2 Chicago firefighters died last year as a result of a wood truss construction similar to that type of construction, and it went down on them. That's why we need to know. And you talked about placards. We also have or Knox boxes. We also have placards that we place in front of construction, in front of businesses that we know are wood truss construction. So they're just illuminated. They're about 6 by 6, and it just allows, gives us, when we pull up, if we don't already know, which we pretty much know where all these types of businesses and what types of construction are anyway, through pre-planning, we know where these businesses are, but that identifies the wood truss construction.
Alderman Fisk.
Yeah, just really briefly, a little history. Davis Street in that block used to be the auto dealership row in the 1917, 1920, and that's why there's all the truss construction there, so that there was no supports in the middle of the building. They could move cars in and out and do all that. And then that moved, the auto dealerships moved up on Ridge, so you'll see the truss construction still continuing up on Ridge. It's beautiful construction, but it's a construction that we still use today in the large grocery stores, but it's all metal, so no
Right.
one's building
The
truss roofs, truss construction.
even across both sides of Davis Street.
Right,
So
right.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And before we leave the topic of the fire, I'd like to ask Gina Speckman to come up. Gina is, I think you all know, is the executive director of Chicago's North Shore Convention and Visitors Bureau, and a group of interested businesses have gotten together for a fundraiser coming up. Gina, good evening.
Yes, thank you very much for having me this evening. I'll be short. Right after we all got news about the fire, I started getting texts and messages, and one I got was from Neely Yellen, who works for John Tasiopoulos at 27 Live. What can we do? And we thought really in talking to Dan Couch from Taco Diablo, the issue and concern for most of the three businesses were these workers who, in the week between Christmas and New Year's lost their jobs basically immediately. And it's more so than the people that were even working at the time. As many of you know, Dan Couch is also closing Lulu's this month, and some of the workers at Lulu's were scheduled and planned to be going over to work at Taco Diablo. Obviously, that wasn't going to be happening either anymore. So the concern was really what happens to these workers. So 27 Live volunteered to host a benefit. And I, along with the Chamber of Commerce and Downtown Evanston, we met right away, like the next day at 27 Live, and we basically whipped this together. It's this Saturday, January 18th. There's 3 bands. Doors open at 8 p.m. There's a website, davisstreetfirefund.com. There's flyers at your place. And for anybody else sitting here, there's flyers now when you walk out. And it's really because of 27 Live coming forward and wanting to help a fellow business. We're promoting it throughout the businesses downtown. Dan Couch is providing food from Taco Diablo and Lulu's, so you can get your last taste of Lulu's before it closes, and also Taco Diablo, which he will rise again, but for now, this might be your last chance. And again, I'd like to thank all the volunteers who really, really fast got together to do this, the 3 bands that are playing, the food. We also are inviting the displaced workers for free to the event, as well as the firefighters.
Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, that was not all that we've had since last we've been here. We've also had a lengthy number of days of severe weather, both snow and cold. Suzette Robinson, our Director of Public Works, is here to give a recap of what we've been through over the last 10 days, 2 weeks or so.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, City Clerk, and City Manager. I am going to talk a little bit about our recent snow events. Okay. Maybe not. Great. Thank you, Cindy. Bless you. So the storm characteristics, Storm 1 occurred on December 31st through January 2nd. We got about 14 inches of snow with minor drifting. So the event basically lasted 49 hours. Thank you. We had a snow emergency, was called for January 2nd and 3rd, and we had a snow route parking ban also on January 2nd and 3rd. Storm 2 occurred on January 4th and 5th. That was 12.5 inches of snow. We had major drifting followed by sub-zero temperatures. The duration of that event was 20 hours. Then during this event, we asked for voluntary compliance for residential and primary route. And then we did post some areas for snow clearance. What's really interesting to note is that the quantity of snow that we received during both of these storms events was not predicted to be as much as it was. And I think distinctly, I remember Jim and I talking about Storm 2 as he headed points south to Georgia that, it's only going to be 1 to 2 inches. And it was 12.5. So, and that was from the weather forecast, not from Jim. So combined, Storm 1 and Storm 2, we had a total of 26.5 inches in a 1 week period. This represents the second snowiest week when we compare that to the National Weather Service record for Chicago O'Hare. This is also 6.5 more inches of snow that we received than the blizzard in 2011, which I'm sure you all remember. And this is 3 inches more than the average annual snowfall for Evanston. So we have already exceeded our average snowfall just on those 2 days alone. So just to kind of give you an idea of our recent snowfall totals, here, starting back in 2010-11, which was the year that we had the blizzard, we got 58.2. The last two winters have been relatively mild in terms of quantity of snow, and then to date we have 39.7 inches, and still quite a bit more winter left to go. So what we also measure, we look at the quantity of snow that we receive, but we also look at the number of events. And most people look at the total of inches, but the number of events also impacts how often we have to mobilize in response. And that can be from a snow event to ice to freezing rain. All of those events are tracked and calculated by the weather service that we subscribe to. So the number of events that we had so far this year they only constitute 7 events. So like when I describe snow event 1 and 2, they look at the storm pattern that may occur over several days, and they group that into an event. Or it may be a freezing rain event that occurs, in an hour. That would actually be an event. If it starts, stops, turns into something else, they actually record that as an event. So those are the events that we've had over the last 3 years in comparison to the snow totals. And the report here takes a look at our snow operations costs. And what I did was the column over the furthest right is the cost for Storm 1 and Storm 2. So as you can see at this point, just from that storm, we spent $411,000, and that's compared to what we spent for the blizzard in 2011 was $539,000. So for fiscal year 2013, last year we spent $715,000. Now, what is a little different about the fiscal year 2013 is that when we're actually tracking from a whole calendar year. So we're going from January to December, whereas 2010, we were still on the old budget system. So that it tracks, the storms are typically tracked from November through April of the following year. So we have to do a little more work to make our data match up a little bit with the budget system. But back in 2010-11, our totals with the blizzard, we were just under $1 million. So to take kind of a closer look at what it means for our 2014 budget, the first column is what we have budgeted. So we have a total of $685,000 budgeted for all snow-related activities. And the storm from January 1st and 2nd, we spent $411,261, and then spent to date is $519,972. So I guess the last column is really the column that we should pay the most attention to. We have already spent more than what we had budgeted for snow overtime. And we're still in pretty good shape as it relates to salt materials. And then equipment rentals, we never budget for. Anyway, that's when for this particular storm, we had to call out additional equipment to haul when we haul snow from the downtown and business district areas. And then our miscellaneous costs are related to the trees and the pothole patching, which I will talk about later. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is our operational parameters. A lot of times when we go into these snow events, we get compared to our adjacent communities. So I really wanted to talk about how Evanston, we're not quite like Wilmette. And what I mean by that is they have an abundance of off-street parking, lots of garages, driveways in which to put their vehicles. They have an on-street residential parking prohibition overnight. That's every day of the year. You can't park on most of their residential streets, and it makes it a lot easier for them to come through and clear snow. Their expectations of their residents, they expect all their streets to be cleared to the curb. And then they have a limited amount of equipment and personnel resources. And on the other hand, we're not quite like Chicago either. They have limited off-street parking. They have mandatory parking prohibitions on the main routes, 2 inches of snow. You can't park on the street. They have, I said unlimited. It seems unlimited to us of salt and equipment resources and personnel resources. The expectations that their travel lanes are clear to the curb. The residential expectations are that the street gets plowed down the middle of the road. And then once again, they have abundance of equipment and material resources. So that brings us to Evanston. Uniquely Evanston, we have an insufficient amount of on-street parking. And what I mean by that is we have enough for everybody to be parked on the street that needs to be parked on the street on every single parking, just virtually every single parking space that we have available on residential and primary routes. And so what that means is if we say you can't park on the primary routes, we have to have some place to put people. So we have to do our snow removal in stages so that we make sure that there's enough residential parking or primary route parking available so residents have options. And again, we also have limited off-street parking. So there are lots of communities that don't have garages, don't have driveways, so they have to park on the street. We have parking prohibitions on main routes and residential routes only if they're declared as such. And we also have limited resources and personnel. And the expectations remains the same, that the travel lanes are clear to the curb and the residential streets are clear to the curb. So trying to accomplish all of that with limited parking and places for people to do can be challenging. Not impossible, but very challenging. So, and then we also have an expectation that the business district sidewalks, community parking areas and train stations are also cleared as well. So what I did was I went back and to take a look at the lessons learned from the blizzard. We established 2 slides of lessons learned as a result of the blizzard. And then I went back to evaluate how I would say we did in those areas. And communication, I think we did a phenomenal job, which Erica will talk about later. The parking flexibility, right off the bat, we went and had the conversations with the schools, made the parking decks available. The Dominic's parking lot, there was lots of neighborhood opportunities to park. The modification of even-odd toll procedures, I gave us a middle-of-the-road type of evaluation, and it had more to do with, we tried to look at the normal snowfall amount and the over 4 inches. I think we handled very well. The over the 12 inches piece, when we go to, at what point do we go to alley cleaning, to, it took us a minute to get to some of those over 12 inches activities, and it had to do with when it all comes down at once and it's 21 inches, it's really clear to see I have 21 inches in front of me that I have to get up versus, when it comes in bits and pieces and then the forecasts don't match the bits and pieces that you're left with. And we expect some of that because we are on the lake, so we know we'll get some lake effect snow. So we still have work to do in that regard. The partnerships, again, right off the bat, every single department, I can really echo what Greg said as it relates to fighting a fire. The city and the resources, the community, everybody comes together and provides support. Now, what I will say was a little different in this storm because after the second snow, it was so cold outside. It was a little different characteristic than the blizzard. After the blizzard was kind of warm, 20 to 30 degrees. There were people in sleds, kids. There was nobody. It was a ghost town when it was so cold outside that, the plows really had a free rein to clean up everything. So that was a little different this time. And then, again, we utilized vendors to come help us haul. We got a hold of them right away before anybody else. We had to wait a little bit, the blizzard, but we called them in, and so we were able to get all the additional support that we needed. And the priorities and consistency, I gave us a so-so grade as it relates to the residential street. We made a decision, knowing that the temperatures were going to be frigid during that Storm 2, not to call a snow emergency or snow out parking ban because of the frigid temperatures. And again, some of that had to do with a team effort in terms of what the impact would be. So we think about what we'll be able to clean the streets, and fire's thinking about, well, if there's a lot of people out in frigid temperatures trying to move their cars and either are not physically able to or are not as physically able to as they think they are, we can create another problem where we've got additional fire runs. And it was really too dangerous to be out in the early parts of the sub-zero temperature. So we elected and thought that would be best for the residents, and that those that could get out and move on a voluntary basis, we would plow around them. Quicker response, I think that we were able to do that. We handled the consolidated public works department, where pulling in parks and forestry personnel, we were able to move resources around and really address all the needs that we needed to do much more quickly in a much more cohesive manner. And then our operations compared to other communities, again, I think that, when I drive around, the people that we received the most complaints about had more to do with the parking situation, that the parking lane wasn't plowed, but the streets were plowed. I think everybody was able to go wherever they needed to go. And so, it took us a couple of days, but, being able to kind of walk around downtown and in some of the other business districts, because we were out there hauling snow, and people were able to go to work when they needed to go to work and go to school whenever they needed to. We were able to go and clear the ADA ramps, the safe routes to school crossings. We had, I think, every base covered. And so as soon as we kind of finished clearing the snow, we ended up with, I think that this has been on the news quite a bit, we went right into pothole patching, because as the temperatures kind of swung back in the other direction and we ended up with rain, we had potholes everywhere, and we're still working. But we got quite a bit done over the weekend, over 26 tons of coal patch, and that's quite a bit. I mean, each of our hot boxes carry about a ton and a half, so they were going back and forth, refilling, going from primary route, and so that cost us about $2,900. And at this point, and before I'm going to turn it over to Paul, who's going to talk a little bit about the tree damage that we also experienced. But I wanted to echo, what Greg said. Not only with all the public works staff and all the divisions, I have to remind myself that, Fleet was amazing. We were able to move and keep our vehicles running. We had very little downtime, so I think they did a good job on the front end preparing our pieces of equipment, so that in the sub-zero temperatures, we had very little breakdowns. Now, as we got towards the end, we got a little more challenging on the end of things, but they really were there to support us. Utilities division provided us with a lot of support. They were the vast majority of the night shift that was hauling snow, and then breaking off to handle some water main breaks in the same process. The workers that have been, they missed Christmas, they missed Christmas Eve, and then they came back on New Year's Eve and kind of worked straight through. So we're happy that nothing is on the horizon significant coming up, so maybe they'll have a much-deserved extended weekend this weekend. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul to talk about trees.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council, Clerk Green, City Manager. Unfortunately, I've got some bad news to report. As a result of the sub-zero temperatures we experienced last week, we've discovered our sycamore and London plane trees, both of which are related, are now suffering from what are called radial shakes. This is not anything I've ever seen in my 35 years working with trees. What these are they're located along the trunk where there's a previous injury or defect, and what's happened is that the sub-zero temperatures have actually expanded these cracks, and some of these cracks are all the way into the very center of the tree. We found them after a 311 request on Tuesday, the 7th, which was on the 2200 block of Dodge. Once we saw that, we noticed several other trees on that same block with the same problem. I ran the list of off of our inventory of all of the sycamore trees and London plane trees in town, which was 303. We looked at those over Wednesday and Thursday and found 60 of these with these full-depth radial shakes, which means they go into and sometimes past the center of the trunk of the tree. And one of the problems when that happens, here's a few examples of the very deep ones, shallow ones, and then fortunately most of the trees have none of these cracks in them. But these very deep ones, once that happens, the tree has no way to compartmentalize the damage, so that these trees will continue to decay in the center of the trees, and they have been severely compromised in a structural sense. So, as I mentioned, the structural integrity is compromised. We're recommending emergency removal of all 60 of these trees that we found this way. I'm requesting for the next 4 Saturdays at the personnel cost of about $3,300. This will limit the impact to the existing backlog. And my existing backlog, just by the way, is currently standing at 309 removals of other trees. More than 280 of those are ash, obviously. We're sitting on 200 request trims. That's people that have requested specific trees to be trimmed, as well as 300 stumps that we have to get out once all this snow melts. We've already actually removed 11 of these 60 trees since last Tuesday. And the really weird thing about the whole problem is that when the crews showed up this morning to start removing some of these trees that we found were cracked last week, most of those cracks have closed back up again, which is even more strange than the cracks themselves. But just because they've closed up doesn't mean that the problem is not still there. These trees will not heal themselves when they were that deeply cracked to begin with. So,
All right.
Alderman Holmes?
Sorry. Is that only on the ones that are very deep, or the shallow ones, they won't heal either if they close up?
shallow ones have a chance to heal if they're only 2 to 3 inches deep. Those have a chance to heal, and we're going to keep looking at those over the coming year. It's only the ones that are deep all the way into the center of the tree that are unable to heal themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it can close up. That explains the woman who wrote to me that you had identified a tree as being damaged that looked okay to her.
That's correct, yes.
All right.
They may
Thank
look okay now, but they're definitely not.
Okay. Thank you. Alderman Tandem?
Thank you. I know that we have, as a city, responsibility for the parkway trees, but there certainly must be quite a few sycamores damaged on private property, and I'm wondering what message we can get out to residents to both identify these trees and how they should proceed after identifying a severe crack. I mean, I think that is such a public safety issue as well, so just curious.
I could put something together that would help people identify a tree on their private property.
Right.
You can always call 311 and we'll come out and take a look.
Even if on private property. Okay.
Sure.
I mean, the media could help us there too. There's some nice pictures there, and I think this could be a serious problem if it's tucked away in your property and falls in your lines or your whatever.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Alderman Grover?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. D'Agostino, and thank you, Director Robinson and Mr. Mayworm, for extraordinary efforts during the 2 big storm events. My question has to do with the trees. Do we have clusters of sycamores similar to the ash trees where, like on Dodge Avenue, where we lost a whole string of trees? Are there trees left on that stretch of Dodge after we the ash and then the sycamore. Did they plant the sycamores in the same way that?
No, they really didn't plant them in the same way, and that's one reason we've only got 300 total trees.
So
There
they're
are-
spread out in the
they-
city.
They are pretty spread out, but there are several blocks. One is the 2200 block of Dodge that had, I think, 7 on that one block.
And if there's a tree that suffered a radial shake, one of the deep, full-depth radial shakes, and maybe appears to have healed, maybe it didn't get caught in the inspection, will its damage become apparent as the year goes on? Or do you think your timing, your inspections were really well timed, such that you've inspected all the trees and you know which ones were mostly damaged?
Yeah, we were able to get through all the inspections by the end of the day on Wednesday, so it only took us a day and a half to get through them. So I'm confident we found the ones that are severely cracked.
All right.
But even so, the ones that are not severely cracked may still continue to decline, and that'll show up in the coming growing season with a thin amount of growth, dieback, could be a number of
So you'll
things.
continue to monitor these
Absolutely,
poor
yes.
trees?
Yes,
So, condolences.
thank you.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If it's okay, I want to pivot away from trees for a moment, if that's all right. Director Robbins, first, thank you very much, you and your staff, Mr. Mayworm, for being very responsive over this past couple of weekends. You were excellent with all of your communication, answering the telephone, and even better at, getting someone out there to address the problem. So thank you very much. One of the questions that I have for you, Director, 2 questions. First, I received 2 sets of phone calls. The first call was from seniors, and so I realized that somewhere on our city website there is a volunteer snow removal. Can you talk a little bit about that and explain to the public how that works? Because I don't know of anyone who used it, but I know that it was online. So tell us how it works.
It works the way the rest of the city works, through 311.
Okay.
To make the request. I think that the most important piece is when you know that, early on in the event, and you know that you're going to have need for the sooner you let us know,
Right.
that the better off we are. This service is not provided by Public Works. They're actually volunteers through the seniors, so I think they go to Christina.
And Erica's going to come up in a second.
Yeah,
so-
and Erica will talk more
Okay,
about that.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Both of those were related to.
Yeah, and then the other question is so in the other set of complaints, actually, another compliment that did an excellent job getting the word out regarding the parking ban. So I didn't get any complaints about cars that were removed, but it was cars that were not removed. And so, thank you for that, and thank you to the residents for the patience. But moving forward, if we get another blanket of snow like this, can you just talk a little bit again, how are you making your decisions on whether to issue the snow emergency? Because I must have received that question 5 times, and I, of course, can't answer it.
Well, when we talked, I think about 6 months ago, of course, we talk about snow when it's not snowing, and we talk about the potential changes. One of the things that I talked to council about is that, we can have this hard, fast rule, which I believe Skokie went to, and they just passed a law and basically said when it's 4 inches of snow, you will follow even odd, period. Across the board, no judgment. That's just the law. What we try to do is we take several things into consideration. For example, if we know that we got 4 inches of snow and the temperature is going to be above freezing and it's all going to melt, we may or may not. It depends on the day of the week. So if it's the weekend and people are at home, we try to think about how easy or comfortable it would be. The workday works the best for us because people tend to leave and they're gone, and it's a lot easier for us. We made an adjustment to our snow emergency time frame. It used to go from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and people said, well, when they come home, they have no place to park, so we made an adjustment and made some changes to our process to do it from 8 to 6 when people are at work. And I think that the the challenge that we have is finding those alternative parking places. And so, it's like I said, it's a variety. This time, the factors were the frigid temperatures that we're following, and that's really what made us hesitant to do it the second time. But I will say that the first snow emergency that we had on the second and third, we probably had the least amount of compliance that I've seen in quite some time. We've relocated quite a few cars. Close to 500 and close to 500 tickets issued for those that we didn't tow, and that's pretty high. So, and that's with increased fee. We just increased the relocation fee. It's a judgment call in terms of, when there's more snow, people are actually a little less likely to move. And then we also had the battle of keeping the middle of the road clear. So even if we were even not in a position to switch, and by the time we were able to issue a snow emergency, the frigid temperatures were upon us. And, like I said, people just wouldn't have had the other side to really go to. When I think I posed the question before is, do you want us to offer the flexibility and judgment and use some of those, and we talked about that even on the conference call, the conference call with council. We kind of laid out the plan and the rationale then to say this is the approach. So that's we have a powwow and kind of have a discussion and it was all the department heads, and then we shared that plan of attack with the council to see, the reason why. So that's.
Thank you, Alderman Fisk, and I remind everyone that it's 9 o'clock at night and we have a 648-page packet to go through still.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also want to compliment you and your staff. I think you did a great job. I got very few complaints. I think people understood the enormity of the task and were good in terms of trying to comply. I especially want to compliment Jim because the emails that I get and that I send to him about the snow removal, I don't know, you have the patience of Job. Honestly, you're just so positive, and everyone feels very satisfied with the answers that you get, and things get done right away. And so thank you for that. I know everyone really appreciates that. Paul, can I just ask you a quick question? I remember when we were having the big elm die-off and removals, that London plane trees were one of those parkway trees that were slated for certain areas, and that they didn't last very long. A lot of them died off pretty quickly. They're not a permitted parkway tree anymore, are they? Are we still?
We are still planting them on a limited basis, but there have been new varieties introduced that are hardier and resistant to some of the disease problems that the older ones
Can we
had
check
succumbed
that
to.
they don't do this radial splitting? And also sycamore trees?
Yes.
So we're not investing in trees that...
Sycamores we
might-
don't really plant anymore. It's
Okay.
certain varieties of London planes that we're still planting. But
Okay.
I can double check to make sure
Okay.
that these newer ones.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thanks.
And Madam Mayor, members of the council, the last piece of this, I'd like to ask Erica Storley, our Deputy City Manager, just to briefly talk about 311. She'll be back in 2 weeks to unveil our new 311 app and some other improvements, so perhaps we can leave much of the report till then, but maybe just give a few highlights of 311 and how it worked over the last couple weeks.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council, Clerk Green, and City Manager. I just have 2 quick slides talking about our outreach effort and our 311 operation during this recent storms. So as you know, we have an email newsletter that we send out, and we have 37,000 recipients on that list. So every single day from January 1st to January 7th, we sent out an email to this list giving people information about the storm. In addition to those 37,000 email recipients, we also have 5,000 people subscribed to our text messaging. So we sent text messages to those people. Obviously, those are great numbers that we can reach people with, but I always encourage people to continue to sign up for these via text message or email, whatever they prefer. Additionally, the community engagement team did a fine job utilizing our social media channels to get the word out and responding to issues that were being brought up through those channels instead of through 311. And especially, as Alderman Braithwaite had brought up, we were able to quadruple the number of volunteers we had for the snow shoveling operation through those efforts. We solicited volunteers through both the emails and the social media channels, and as the community often does, they responded with generosity in looking for people who needed help to shovel. Also, we always update the Channel 16 and the radio during these snow events. The last slide I have is just some data on our 311 call center. 311 call center normally isn't open on New Year's Day or on Sundays. We opened both of those days to handle questions that were coming in about these events. Additionally, we were open some extended hours during this period. And I realize without knowing what our average call volume is, it doesn't let you know that these are very high numbers. The January 2nd, normally we would see anywhere from 300 to 500 calls on a day like that, and we got 831, which is a top 15 day in the history of 311. So the 311 staff people did a phenomenal job answering the calls as they came in and keeping the abandon rate low. And not many people didn't reach somebody when they were trying to get through, so that's good kudos to them for making sure they were monitoring the calls that were in queue and getting to them before people were dropping off. Additionally, we now have this live chat option on our website, which a lot more people have been taking advantage of. So I just want to give another shout out to people to utilize that service. It seems to be something that people have found quite useful, and will continue to use that as another channel. Lastly, wanted to mention that the service requests that have been taken in over this period of time also very high. Normally on a regular day we might see 30 to 50 service requests, and nearly 100 or over 100 on some of these days was really quite high, and it was able to relay the information that was coming in from the public to the departments that needed to get it. And generally the feedback that we got from the residents through the calls were mostly positive, and they were very appreciative of having the parking garages available to park in. And it's a very key tool for us to have that feedback mechanism so we can see where problem areas are and really get a feel for what the community is going through. So that's all I have on that.
And Erica, if you could stay right there, Madam Mayor, we have one last item, unrelated but sort of related, and that is that we've recently been recognized by the Illinois Policy Institute for the city's transparency. We are one of the few communities in Illinois to receive a 100% rating. And Erica, perhaps you can introduce the gentleman from the Illinois Policy Institute who decided to come and give us a special award for our 100% rating. So, sir, maybe you can just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the award.
Madam Mayor, Council, City Manager, City Clerk. My name is Brian Costin. I'm the Director of Government Reform from the Illinois Policy Institute. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and one of our keystone projects that we have at the Institute is our local transparency project. And what it is we've created a 10-point transparency best practices recommendation for local governments all across the state of Illinois to implement. This includes things such as contact information for elected officials and key administrators, information about meetings, information about how to file a Freedom of Information Act request, budgets, audits, employee compensation, expenditures, contracts, taxes, and lobbying. And the reason why we started this project is that we noticed that there's there's a number of problems in the state of Illinois, one of it being government corruption. And we think that this is one of the solutions to that problem. There's also sometimes a lack of participation in government, and by having the opportunity for citizens to get educated about local government through online transparency is another way to help them become educated participants in local government. And finally, we believe that taxpayers have a right to know how their money is being spent. So since 2010, when we started the project, we have graded over 300 local government agencies in the state of Illinois. Plus, local government agencies can always contact us and request a score. And the city of Evanston is one of only 6 local government agencies in the state of Illinois to get a perfect 100% on the local transparency project. And to put that in perspective, only 1 out of more than 1,000 local government agencies in the state. There's like almost 7,000 local government agencies in the state. So 1 out of 1,000 get this award so far. And I wanted to congratulate everyone here on the council. I also wanted to mention that Luke Stowe, he did a lot of the work on this as well. He was kind of my point person of who I communicated with and worked over a period of many months to help make this happen. And we're just so thankful for the city of Evanston to set an example for other local governments across the state of Illinois. And hopefully one day this will be something that happens all over the state of Illinois and not just 6 government agencies. So we just really wanted to express our appreciation for really showing the way for other communities across the state of Illinois. So I'd like to give this award to the mayor.
And while the mayor's walking up, I do want to recognize Luke Stowe in the back of the room. Luke is our digital services coordinator, is everything internet for us, and does an outstanding job.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And as I'd mentioned, Eric, I'll be back in 2 weeks. If you want to check out, if you go to the App Store for Apple or to the Android store and search Evanston, you will find our new 311 app, and we'll be formally rolling that out in 2 weeks' time. So we're very excited about that. And Madam Mayor, with that, that concludes my reports.
Thank you. City Clerk, do you have communications for us?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have 2 important announcements I want to make. For those who've been calling the office asking when they can register to vote, the clerk's office, along with the Women's League of Voters, will be having a voter registration drive this Thursday, the 16th, from 9 to 5 p.m. We'll be located in rooms 2402 and 2404. So all of you who are out there want to register to vote, come in at that time. There's been a new law also passed that if you're 17 years old of age now, and you're going to be 18 by the time the election comes around, you can also register to vote at this time as well. One other law came out, Public Act 97-0845, is reference to the new Disability Act that's come around, that those who have disability placards, they're becoming more stringent in the eligibility for those who are disabled. And so they're having two tiers of placards that they have now. If you have a yellow and gray placard, that's your permanent placard. That will mean that you will not have to pay at the meters. You're exempted from it. But if you're not critically incapable of moving or paying or putting money into the meters, then you have your regular permanent placard, and you will have to pay at the meters. But you still will be able to park free at the designated disability spots. But as for the meters, if you don't have a yellow and gray, you will have to pay at the meters. And that's all I have for this evening, Mayor.
Thank you.
I should get the fines.
Next item on the agenda is citizen comment. The first speaker is Junad Rizki on agenda items.
Tonight I will speak to the potential contract to sell water to Niles, item 5 under the Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Evanston and Niles. I want to be clear to this council about my issue. I'm not opposed to selling water. What I'm appalled by is the lack of the cities producing honest numbers on the current sales of water to current customers that deal with profits, losses, and operating expenses. This is not about a new small increment of new revenue, but whether the so-called business is really running in the black. My own analysis keeps on showing this operation is in the red, with Evanston ratepayers potentially subsidizing the other customers. I believe we could be several $1 million in the red. The Evanston Water Reservoir project now proposed creates a 40% extra capacity beyond current levels. What's interesting, this so-called extra capacity comes with a cost. A 20% water bill increase to the Evanston customers, with current and future non-Evanston residents appearing not to pay for this. So where's the benefit here? It's time for this council to show responsible fiscal leadership and demand the city manager, chief financial officer, and the utilities director show this is operating like a business. I believe the reason senior staff here cannot and will not produce real numbers is they know once the real numbers come out, it'll be a potential political scandal. We need an outside audit of the department accompanied by a complete review of the business model, determining real operations and true and honest profits and losses. If this is not done, I believe we may enter into more future not profitable water contracts. The current director of utilities wants a 30% plus increase on the water bills, and he claims more are needed. So it's likely we're talking 50% pretty quickly here. It's time the city manager, CFO, and director of utilities explain to us how any new contracts will lower our water bills. Years ago, the city entered into unprofitable water contracts which still are valid. I do not see any difference here. It appears to me the current staff is about to possibly enter into more unprofitable contracts for political purposes. But beyond my lack of faith in senior staff, my concern is if these water bills could quickly double or triple, which could hurt individual residents' home values and finances, as well as possibly move the city to bankruptcy. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Schneider. Kevin, if you'll state your name and address, that would be great to start.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Kevin Schneider, and I live at 2300 Noyes Court, apartment 409. I'm here to talk about, I used to work at Dominic's at 2748 Green Bay Road, and now it's no longer there, so I now work at Jewel Food Store at 411 Green Bay Road in Wilmette. That will give me public transportation like taking a bus or even taking a cab or the metro train. So I have people that used to work at Dominic's with my former co-workers like Jay and Nina and Patty, and the pharmacies are like Sandy and Irwin. So I have a lot of selections at Jewel where they have more dairy products and produce and houseware items. And I feel good to be working at Jewel with my customers and to new co-workers and former co-workers.
Congratulations, Kevin. Alderman Grover.
If you all didn't already know, one of the biggest assets at the Green Bay Road Dominick store were its employees. And Kevin was one of the main reasons anyone went to the Dominick store. And now he is, for me, the primary reason to shop in Wilmette.
There is no primary reason to shop in Wilmette.
I would for Kevin. And so, Kevin, I think we can all say that we're so glad that you've landed well. Want to thank, of course, your friends at Northwestern University Athletics who brushed up your interviewing skills ahead of the job application process. And really, we're so pleased that you've done well. And as you've reported, there are, I think, 4 or 5 employees of the Green Bay Dominick store out of more than 70 who have found jobs at the Jewel in Wilmette. A number of your colleagues from the Dominicks have determined to retire. They've retired altogether. Some have gotten the part-time jobs at the Jewel as union rules allow, and we were looking to help the rest of them. So congratulations.
Thanks a lot, Kevin, for coming and telling us. We appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Next is Bonnie Wilson and Junad Rizki. And Joyce Hill are the next three speakers.
Thank you, Mayor Tisdale, and thank you, Alderman. I'm here, Bonnie Wilson, as the Evanston Township Assessor. And I'm going to announce about the senior exemption. Everyone just received, seniors, not everyone, the seniors just received their senior exemption. Evanston senior citizens receive renewal applications for senior citizen property tax exemptions on Saturday, and will have until February the 5th to return them to the Cook County Assessor's Office. Local senior citizens should feel free to call my office at 847-448-8168, and I'd be happy to help them fill out their forms, and I will personally deliver them to the Cook County Assessor's Office. The eligibility for senior citizen exemptions, there are two senior citizen tax exemptions. The senior exemptions, which is available to all seniors regardless of income, reduces property taxes by about $550 and is available to any owner-occupied residential property owner who was born in 1948 or earlier. Now, I also want to explain that there's one form, and the one form has a senior freeze on the form as well as the senior exemption. If you do not qualify for the senior freeze, you still need to fill out the form for the senior exemption. The senior freeze provides some seniors with additional savings of the combined income of all members of the household if it's less than $55,000, and if the senior has been an owner-occupied of the property since January 1st of 2012. So you have to live in your home as of January 1st, 2012, and your household income has to be less than $55,000 to apply for the senior freeze. The senior applications have been mailed and for 2013 property taxes, which are paid for in calendar year 2014. The savings from the exemptions will appear on the second installment of tax bills that will likely be mailed in July of 2014. The law on heiress exemptions. A new law requires taxpayers to repay tax savings received from the exemptions that they are not eligible for. If a senior citizen recently died or moved, the property may not be eligible for a senior exemption this year. If the senior resided at the property at any time during 2013, the property will be eligible for the 2013 senior citizen exemption for taxes paid in calendar year 2014. But the property will not be eligible for senior exemptions on the 2014 taxes paid in 2015. Unless the senior left a surviving spouse who is 65 or older. A surviving spouse who completes the application may continue receiving the senior exemptions. Information for seniors not receiving mailings. Homeowners who were born in 1948 and turned 65 in 2013 and thus are likely to be eligible for one of the senior exemptions for the first time. Taxpayers who recently turned 65 will not receive application forms when the senior renewal forms are mailed. I encourage such individuals to call my office to obtain the forms and information necessary to receive the senior benefits. The forms are also available online at www.cookcountyassessor.com. A reminder that Evanston Township Assessor's Office has moved to the Civic Center. Many people are now going to Main and Dodge, and I'm trying to get that word out as much as I can that we're now at the Civic Center. And we are on the first floor next to the city clerk's office. It is best to call our office for an appointment instead of walking in. Our number again is 847-448-8168, and I encourage all seniors to call our office to apply for these exemptions. I will pass these out to the alderman. This information, there's also another information on deferred taxes for seniors. and I will pass this off. And I encourage all of you who are having meetings this month or before February 5th or have newsletters to please include this information in your newsletters and into your ward meetings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Riskey.
There was an item on the agenda, but I'm not speaking so much to the item, but an issue with the item that's very interesting. I'm not pro or con to the item. There's $70,000 on here for what you're calling vortex restrictors. They're obviously in the storm sewers, and they're used to basically decrease the flow of water. But there was an interesting statement in here made by staff in the memo, since we're talking about transparency. Over time, the restrictors installed in the system go missing. Well, you know, how does something installed underground in a system go missing? Could somebody explain that to me? The question is, as I looked at this, I started to wonder, well, why would this happen? I looked farther at the proposal, and we're buying 40 of these. But what are these things made out of? Stainless steel. Question is, why did these go missing? Did somebody take them and sell them for scrap? What happened? Why are we replacing them? And given that, you know, people aren't going to be able to climb down into the sewers, storm sewers, and take these things out, I'd like to know what happened. As a taxpayer, why we're going to now spend $70,000 here. So the question is really, you know, is this a very transparent memo we have from city staff? These things just go missing? Do they grow legs and walk away? Or were they taken away and sold? Thank you.
Thank you. Joyce Hill, do you want to speak?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and City Clerk Green. In June of 2013, I received a call from the police chief of the Evanston, Police Chief Eddington. He called to inform me that he had information regarding a possible attempt that would be made on my son's life. And he asked, as a responsive public servant, if he could send a police unit to my address to ward off such an attempt. I applaud this effort and welcomed his assistance. There was no trouble that evening. But imagine my surprise with this recent accounts of the 2013 crime report, which was recently released in one of the local papers and articles where he named my son, the very subject of that previous public safety effort, whom he then felt life was in danger, Antoine Hill, as the poster child for the stop and frisk efforts of the Evanston Police during the 2013 as a fruitful crime deterrent tactic. I consider that amazing. Thus, to add how he became the poster child before the actual event even occurred sums up to it being a classist and egregious and pretty close to entrapment, should also be reviewed at a higher authorities level. I am equally surprised that my recent phone call to his office has still remained unreturned. But I guess I'm not approaching this situation properly. Maybe I should set up clandestine meetings in downtown Evanston business restaurants like Chili's, as so other called private citizens and upper-level EPD personnel outside the realms on the police stations do. Yet, I would be remiss if I did not question how this can be deemed as a legitimate and proper meeting to discuss these and any concerns within the professional standards that should be adhered to by the Evanston Police Department. But I am sure all of the recent reporting efforts are to inform the public of things happening in and around the surrounding community of which they live and interact in, well needed. To that I add what has been said, that the pen is mightier than the sword. But you see, the power of the pen can also be deadly. It is a deadly when the writer is utilizing creative stories from the only point of view, one, and perspective. I am admonishing the readers as they stand on their condominium balconies to not be so naive. In fact, it is stories like these that are choking the life out of our community in which we are now living. You still have not solved one case as of yet. I would like to go on record stating this on my son's behalf. He was never stopped and frisked. The so-called municipal practice or ordinance was in effect long before his release. I myself remember bearing witness to a sloppy attempt against some individuals sitting in a park in which their civil rights were in jeopardy had I not been there during such a frivolous feat. I would also like to make mention on my son's behalf that he has only been convicted of one crime, which he has served his time for, yet individuals with accountable more felonies attached to their name have been arrested, released, to travel the streets of Evanston, to only be rearrested again. I did not see these figures in his wonderful comprehensive report to inform this wonderful community of this valiant effort.
Ms. Hill, I do need you to wrap up.
I would applaud the City of Evanston on its recent addition to the community liaison for the LGBT community. Each sect of this community in this most livable city should have one, a liaison that is. But I have to ask, where's the African American liaison for Evanston? Where is this person, our face? Since the J. Coleman's murder, we have had numerous town hall meetings and other things behind tragic events as such in Evanston concerning the wave of violence within our community. We've yet to see one viable program that has garnered any of these efforts. All we've seen is continuous self-gratification and boasting of the community planning events for million-dollar real estate projects. We came together not just to tell you what we think, Mayor and the City Council, but what we feel and what we need, and respectfully and trustingly thought you would respond to it. But these ideas, suggestions, and needs have seemingly fallen on deaf ears. No youth programming inclusive to the ideas or the needs of the community with so many open wounds. No reentry or second chance programs accessible. No adult education and work training and development efforts to make persons more employable, thus more households responsible and sustainable within this community as well. Or do we have to buy a condo to get your respect and response while you play your banjo?
Thank you. Is there anyone else who's a latecomer and wants to comment? Would you give your name and address?
Linda Damashek, 1318 Judson. I'm here to speak tonight on the B&B proposal that's being introduced tonight. And I felt that I really needed to come and speak personally because I'm the only person in this room, I'm sure, and maybe in much larger connections, who has personal experience with this. I lived next to a bed and breakfast for 10 years, and it had a lot of downsides to it. And so I'd like you all to really take it to heart. That it's a very intrusive experience for the person who lives next door, and that there's no question that bed and breakfasts are commercial ventures. It's a business, and it's intrusive into the residential quality of life. And basically, B&B owners are profiting financially at the expense of their neighbors. Pretty pure and simple, really. It would be, there's a proposal to break it into two different types. And I wanted to comment on those proposals. But I spoke to the Planning Commission, and one of the persons there was asking, well, does it make any difference? You know, how is a B&B person any different than, a college kid coming home to visit? And I responded that in our area we have people living in coach houses. We have, lots of people coming and going. But the difference is that somebody in a coach house is your neighbor. You know these people. When you have a constant stream of strangers coming in to your next door, it really affects the quality of life. And I really wanted you all to think about it personally. There's privacy, there's safety of young children. There's some serious considerations for the average homeowner. So this proposal really affects every single ward. And so I really want you all to think about how this would affect the people in your wards. I wanted to say that from the large picture point of view, whatever limited income the city might derive from this is really chump change in the city budget, and I don't think it should really be any consideration at all in your deliberations. I think that there is no reason to allow commercial intrusion into residential areas and not even require the owner to live there. I think it's just incomprehensible. I think there should be 100% ownership requirement for both types. I think there should be limited numbers allowed in all the wards. I mean, honestly, this really affects all the wards, and I want you all to think about it very seriously. I think all B&Bs should be requiring special use approval because neighbors have a right to know that there's a business opening up next door to them. They shouldn't be blindsided by that. That's not fair.
Linda, could you wrap up?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyway, so in summary, this proposal is very detrimental to the quality of residential life for all of Evanston, and all the wards would be negatively affected. And I really want to ask every single one of you alderpersons to think about what if a B&B opened next to your home. I want to personally tell you that it would negatively affect your personal quality of life. And I really want you to think about that personally when you're deliberating this issue and not make a decision that, just imagine that it was happening next to your home. Because what you're putting into place, it absolutely could happen next to your home. So please consider that very seriously. Thank you very much.
That concludes, I believe, unless there's anyone else wanting to speak, that concludes public comments. Alderman Rainey, could we have the consent agenda, please?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. The Administration and Public Works Committee met this evening, and we recommend the following: that you approve the minutes of the regular council meeting for December 9, the city payroll through the 1st of December, the 15th of December, and December 29, in the amounts of $2,623,163.03, $2,690,925.76, $2,675,887.53. We ask you approve the bills for January 14, the amount of $5,318,551.94, and the credit card activity ending November 30th in the amount of $105,302.14. We ask that you approve a sole source contract with EJ Equipment for the purchase of CCTV pipeline inspection equipment in the amount of $37,161. Your approval is requested to authorize the manager to execute a sole source contract for the purchase of vortex restrictors with Hydro International in the amount of $70,350. We ask your approval for 2014 refuse disposal fees to Swank in the not to exceed amounts of $83,300 for capital, $1 million for operations and maintenance, and $40,000 in recycling transfer fees. Your approval is also requested to authorize the manager to execute a change order number 1 to the agreement for engineering services for the Evanston Water Utility 48-inch diameter intake improvement project with Carrillo Engineers in the not to exceed amount of $675, increasing the contract to $160,658. We ask your approval also to authorize the manager to execute a change order number 1 in the not to exceed amount of $69,592.43 with Boulder Contractors. I beg your pardon, this is off the consent agenda and will be addressed by the committee chair. Next item is approval of the memorandums of understanding and amendment number 1 to the agreement with MWH Americas, Inc. for engineering services for a water supply transmission study. This is in a not-to-exceed amount of $24,600. We ask your approval also to authorize the manager to enter into an agreement with AT&T. Was this amended in committee? The AT&T amended to include non-8. I'm going to take this off the consent agenda. Yes. Next, the report on the vacant property fine for 1890 Maple. was also amended in committee, so I'll take that off. A8 we're on now. The City Council is asked to approve the city manager to negotiate the lease of office space with Northwest Center Against Sexual Abuse at the rate of $11 per square foot for a total monthly rent of $250 at the Civic Center. We ask your approval for Resolution 1R14 to authorize the manager to execute a collective bargaining agreement with the International Association of Firefighters, Local 742, effective January 14 through December 31, 2016. Approval is requested also to authorize the manager to negotiate a contract to purchase real property located at 723 Howard Street in Evanston, Illinois. Funding is from the Howard Ridge Tax Increment Financing District. We ask your approval for introduction to increase the number of Class C liquor licenses to Agam on Clark's, increase the licenses to 20 and permit the issuance of Class C license to Agam on Clark's doing business as Clark's at 720 Clark. Your approval is requested to introduce Ordinance 5014, which decreases the number of Class G liquor licenses from 2 to 1 due to Trader Joe's relinquishing the Class G license for a Class F license. Your approval is requested to introduce Ordinance 6014, increasing Class F licenses from 8 to 9 and permit issuances of a Class F license to Trader Joe's East at 1211 Chicago Avenue. Introduction is requested of Ordinance 7014, which amends the code, the amended code of 2012 to increase the number of Class C licenses from 20 to 21 to permit issuance of a Class C license to L3 LLC doing business as Life Kitchen, 1603 Orrington Avenue. Continuing, City Council is requested to approve introduction of Ordinance 8014, which amends the Code of 2012 as amended to increase the number of C licenses from 21 to 22 and permit a C license to Horizon Group Management, the Crystal Residence, formerly called the North Shore Hotel, at 1611 Chicago. We ask your approval also of introduction of Ordinance 9014, amending the Code of 2012 as amended to increase Class C liquor licenses from 22 to 23 and permit issuance of a C license to Bite of China, doing business as Lao She's Shan. How's that? 1633 Orrington Avenue. This is the Boltwood license, which those of us who attended ETHS just love. The City Council is asked to introduce Ordinance 11014, which amends City Code of 2012 as amended to increase the number of authorized C licenses to from 23 to 24 and permit the issuance of Class C license to HKK I don't know if that's supposed to be LLC or LCC, doing business as HKK Company at 804 Davis. We ask your approval. The local liquor commission and the committee asks your approval to introduce Ordinance 10014, amends the city code by creating a new Class M liquor license permitting licensees to sell beer as part of a brew-it-yourself beer making classes, parties, events, demonstrations, and similar activities, etc., etc. This is for introduction. The Planning and Development Committee met this evening, and they asked your approval to introduce the Zoning Board of Appeals recommendation, granting a special use permit to operate a Type 2 restaurant, Harold's Chicken Shack, at 337 Howard Street. We also ask your approval, and the Zoning Board of Appeals recommends Ordinance 13014, granting a special use permit for the operation of a Type 2 restaurant, DMK Burger Bar and Fish Bar at 815 Noyes for introduction. The Zoning Board of Appeals and the committee and staff recommend introduction of Ordinance 14014, granting a special use permit for a retirement home, Evanston Nursing Home at 1300 Oak Avenue, for major zoning relief for a one-story addition. This is for introduction. Next is having to do with bed and breakfast, and that is off the consent agenda. It'll be addressed by the committee chair. P5, Ordinance 123-013 grants a major zoning relief to establish open parking in the front yard at 1912 Livingston Street. This is for action. Human Services Committee recommends, and the Evanston Township Supervisor recommend approval of the township bills, payroll, and medical expenses for December in the amount of $213,515.85. Madam Mayor is recommending the following appointments. Following appointments for the Downtown Performing Arts Center Task Force. Let me do Board of Ethics first. Rhonda Stewart. Downtown Performing Arts Center Task Force. Sandra Chavis, Jim Coriassi, John Engman, Patrick Fitzpatrick, Judy Kemp, Stephen Mullins, Tanya Palmer, Jean Petrick, Penny Rothheiser, and for the Mayor's Educational Task Force, Karen Norrington Reeves, who is the CEO of Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. Madam Mayor, with that, I move the consent agenda.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. It's been moved and seconded to pass the consent agenda. City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Fisk.
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Holmes.
Aye.
Alderman Tindem.
Aye.
Alderman Grover. Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Alderman Burris. 9-0.
The consent agenda is passed. Alderman Rainey, could you walk us through administration and public works?
Thank you. Madam Mayor, item A 4.2, having to do with the change order number 1 for the Davis Street water main and sewer replacement project, bid 1336. This is a matter. This is a matter where all the work is done. This is a payment that has yet to be made, and because there is an issue and a request from Alderman Braithwaite regarding the compliance status of the contractor, we are holding this in committee. Okay, and we were assured by staff that it's not an issue of timing or anything like that. Next. A6, approval of the agreement with AT&T for downtown Evanston Wi-Fi network. Madam Mayor, I move approval of this with the addition of an amendment that requests that staff negotiate for, instead of a payment for the use of our poles, that non-AT&T customers be able to access the service. Okay, so I move approval.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to amend the agreement.
I don't think this requires a roll call.
Okay. No. I was just going to say all in favor, say aye.
Good.
I mean, sorry, Clerk Green is good at what he does, but...
That was quick.
Well, it's because I didn't take the noes. All opposed, say no.
All right, next, so that passes, right?
Yes, it
All right,
does.
moving right along.
Motion
Next
passes.
item is A7, report on vacant property fine, 1890 Maple. It is a matter of an amendment to the staff's request that we receive and file this report, and the amendment had to do with Alderman Braithwaite recommending that instead of the direction in the memo that the $2,400 fine be deducted, or that any future fees deduct $2,400. Instead of that, the amendment is that the payment be remitted to the person who paid it in the first place. In other words, Carroll Properties. So that's the amendment. Or Park Investments. Right. Okay.
So that's your motion?
That's my motion.
And it's seconded. All in favor? Well, this is money. Sorry, City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson. Alderman Holmes.
Aye.
Alderman Tindem. Alderman Grover. Alderman Rainey. Alderman Burris. 9-0.
9-0, the motion passes.
Madam Mayor, I believe that's it. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Nguyen, Planning and Development.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have one item, P4, I believe. It's ordinance 2-0-14, amending various portions of the city code, bed and breakfast establishments. The Plan Commission and the city staff recommended amending the zoning ordinance to establish type 1 and type 2 B&Bs. Each would require a special use approval, 33% owner occupancy, and type 2 would require a distance requirement. I move approval. Actually, this was for introduction. So.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to introduce this. Alderman Rainey.
I'm going to ask that you call the roll.
Yes. City Clerk, would you call the roll? No one else wants to discuss this.
Alderman Fisk. Alderman Braithwaite. No. Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson. No. Alderman Holmes.
No.
Alderman Tindem. No. Alderman Grover. No. Alderman Rainey.
No.
Alderman Burris.
No.
7-2.
The motion does not pass.
No further report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Everything else is covered. We are at call of the wards. Who do we start with? Alderman Fisk.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to wish everyone Happy New Year. I want especially to thank not only the fire department, which I did earlier, but also the police department for their handling of the incident with the Chase Bank robbery and their cooperation with the FBI on that. I think that was an important event. And again, we're just fortunate to have such professional people in our police and fire department. So a special thank you to Chief Eddington and his leadership on that. And that's my report.
Thank you. Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As well, Happy New Year to the council and the residents that are paying attention. I want to go back. I want to thank the gentleman who came up during public comments from the former Dominic store, just reminded me to acknowledge all the residents who, over the Dempster Dodge, planned a reception for the many employees that lost their jobs. So thank you all. In addition to that, I'd like to just acknowledge and thank our city staff on behalf of our MWEB committee, Assistant Manager, City Manager Marty Lyons, Deputy City Manager Joe McCrae, Tammy Turner, Manager in our Purchasing Department, Janella, who I will not remember her last name, and also Jonathan for all their hard work and assistance to make this year's Procurement 101 workshop a success. We had members of representation from the city, District 65, 202, Northwestern, Rotary, and I hope I didn't forget anyone, present to work with our Evanston businesses and get them off to a good start in what I would call a very successful workshop. So thank you very much. And that concludes my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Wilson.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate my appreciation or the comments of Alderman Fisk and others as to the police and fire departments, not just as a council member, but as a member of the community. I feel very safe and grateful for the level of protection that we get, and also my appreciation for everybody else in the city who works hard to enable them to do their jobs. So job well done, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Alderman Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just again, I wish everyone a really productive and healthy 2014. And just to remind you that on this Thursday at Fleetwood at 7 o'clock. We'll be having the regular Fifth Ward meeting, and we will be discussing. Carl Kniever will be there to discuss vacant buildings. So if anybody's interested, please stop by.
Thank you. Alderman Tandem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to announce that there is a Sixth Ward meeting on January 23rd, 7 p.m. at the Three Crowns Park, 2323 McDaniel. On the agenda, there will be a discussion and Q&A for the upcoming referendum on dissolution of the township. Also, Representative Laura Fine will be there to talk about her, the Assembly's up-and-coming 2014 agenda. So that's 7 o'clock, Three Crowns on January 23rd. Also, I'd like to just get a shout-out to something that appeared in the Tribune this weekend. When anyone gets this much ink in the Tribune, I think it deserves a shout-out, especially if they're in the 6th Ward. This is an article about Pat Baldwin, who's an assistant coach who has returned to Evanston, recruited by Coach Collins. And it's quite a very compelling and amazing article about him and his wife, who is also an outstanding volleyball player at Northwestern. So it's just the kind of story that makes you again and again realize why we live here and what people bring to and come back to do in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, a thank you to all the residents and the neighbors who came to the Dominic's on Green Bay right before it closed to celebrate the employees there. Thank you to the mayor for spending so much time with the employees. It was really a nice event. We had students coming in from the schools after school on that Friday, taking trays of cookies and stuff to the guys who are restocking the shelves and back behind the deli counter. Thank you, Mr. Seidenberg, for your really lovely coverage of the event. I think you captured it. But it was really nice to have this event for the employees before the store closed. The city of Evanston has lost a long-time resident. Her name was Antoinette Tony Rainin. She died January 2nd, and Tony lived with us in Evanston for 68 years. She moved here from Wisconsin in 1946. Or for 68 years. For 62 of those years, Tony sang with the St. Athanasius Church Choir, and she and I sat next to each other in the alto section for about the last 12 years. She was a good friend, and I was sorry to lose her. She lived most of her time in Evanston at the corner of Livingston and Broadway until she moved to Presbyterian Homes, where she died earlier this month. She had a rich alto voice. She loved to do a jig. She was playful and epitomized kind of gentleness and patience, most certainly. She had a long, successful career with Illinois Bell as an operator and then a supervisor of operators. And when she retired from that job, she worked for 15 years as a receptionist at the Mather. So please think of Antoinette Tony Rainin. Her funeral will be this coming Saturday at St. Athanasius at 11. And the many members of the St. Athanasius Choir, as you can imagine, are getting back together for a reunion for this to celebrate Tony's life.
Thank you. Alderman Rainey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to reiterate, especially Judy Fisk's comments. I thought they were very inclusive of all of the public servants in this community and all the work. It was obvious that it wasn't just the snowplowers and it wasn't just the firemen that made things good. It was a coming together of everybody and a lot of fire departments, as a matter of fact. I also want to thank Kelly Cassidy, the state rep for the area of Howard Street where the Peckish Pig is located, having a little trouble there getting the state over to do an inspection, and she made a phone call for us, and just amazing. 8 weeks was reduced to 1 week, and the inspectors are coming, I believe, on this Friday. So I think we're going to see the opening of the Brewpub very soon. And also thank you to the council for supporting the purchase of the Howard Street building. It's really a very important, one of the last pieces in the puzzle for that strip of Howard, one of the last pieces. So I appreciate that. And now I would like to introduce my colleague, Alderman Burris, who's going to make a very significant announcement. Alderman Burris.
Wow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, go
Thank
right.
you, Alderman
just
Rainey.
did.
Something that Alderman Rainey and I and former Alderman Hanson and Johanna Neiden and everyone in economic development and Wally Bobkowitz and anybody in the city that is willing to help us, we have a fun announcement. The owners of Little Beans Cafe, which is a family cafe and indoor playground located in Chicago's Lincoln Park neighborhood, are looking to open a new location in Evanston and have filed paperwork for a special use permit to occupy the former Osco site at Oakton and Asbury. You have no idea. The Little Beans is currently working with the property owner to negotiate a lease, so this is not a done deal. And I think Mr. Bobkowitz said at breakfast this morning he won't believe it until Alderman Rainey and I are cutting a ribbon with the mayor. So we're still hopeful. But again, thank you to Ann and Johanna. But to learn more about the Little Beans and the cafe and meet the owners, please attend the 9th Ward meeting on February 12th at 7 p.m. at the Levy Center. The owners will be there to tell us more about it. Thank you all.
We will start polishing the scissors right now.
It's a long time.
Congratulations. I have one very sad announcement before I call on Alderman Wilson. Alderman Betty Payden died, and her funeral. What, Peter? You want to claim the ward? And her funeral will be Friday evening, but we're not sure of at Ebenezer, but we're not sure of the time. But we will get that. All right. And her family has my condolences. She's a force within the city. Yes.
And if I may, before Alderman Wilson, just a reminder, we have a meeting Wednesday evening with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources about their proposal for the Harley Clark Mansion, and also a reminder that there will not be a city council meeting next week. So the next council meeting will be Monday, January 27th.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
Pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes, ILCS 120/2A, I move that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding personnel, litigation, and minutes. These agenda items are permitted subjects to be considered in executive session and are enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act. These exceptions are 5 ILCS 120/2A, C1, C11, and C21.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.